Hi, agents, and welcome to the show. This is Katlyn Eggar, your host, and thanks for joining me back on the Age of Independence. We are having such a fun summer bringing you guys content about everything branding, contact center, sales coaching, processes, and today is a topic I've really been looking forward to on all about how to brand your agency. And there's so much strategy that goes into the angle you're going to take on how you're going to set your agency apart from the other agencies in the marketplace, and how you can be really smart about the moves that you're going to make when it comes to who you are, how you're going to differentiate what you do, and what that means for your team and your internal branding as well. So we have a special guest, and our guest today has been in the insurance world for a long time, very well versed in agency life and the economics of the industry and what this means for our branding strategies. So hi, Peter, how are you?
Hi, Katlyn. I love insurance. What can I say?
I do too. I love insurance, and I love talking insurance, and
Yeah,
it feels like a hobby sometimes. So
it
thanks for
does.
joining me, and tell us where you are joining us from.
Well, we're based here in Fairfax, Virginia, which is essentially Washington, D.C., but our firm is pretty virtual. We're around the country, our consultants and associates.
Do you do a lot of traveling, or has that kind of tailored back lately?
It was a slow year. Normally, it's quite a bit of travel to see clients, but I also like going to conventions like you do, like to see people, because I love insurance, but I love insurance peeps.
Yes.
And I love my peeps, so I have to go out and see them. I can't sit in the office. That's just not my bag. I like to go see people. So when we get back to meeting at conventions, which I think is starting in the fall of 21 this year, yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait for it.
The conventions are starting to trickle back through, and I'm so looking forward to it, and can't wait to see everyone in person and put a face with the name for people that I've met virtually over the past year or so since Quantum was born in the independent market. There's been so many people to meet, and we did so many meetings virtually last year. I think I was doing about 150 Zoom meetings a month. I'm back in the office now most days, and it's been nice to get back out there and to be able to interact face to face when we can.
Yeah, it is.
So tell us about the Aartrijk firm, Peter, for those of us who maybe have not crossed paths with your company. Tell us what you do for agents.
Well, it all started on a dark and stormy night. How I got involved in insurance in the first place, where I was a journalist working for a daily newspaper up in New Jersey, where I grew up. And it was, a long story short, I just couldn't hack it anymore. It's tough being a journalist, especially for the newspaper. So I answered an ad in the Newark Star Ledger for a job at AM Best Company, at Best Review Magazine, an editorial role. And so that led me down the path of journalism in insurance, and then ultimately with the Insurance Information Institute and the National Underwriter, and then the Independent Insurance of America, the Big I. So different association roles in PR. And back in '99, now 22 years ago, we started Aartrijk, which is a family company. There's 22 of us. Our job is to work inside the independent agent and broker channel, mostly inside. We do some customer work, consumer work on behalf of companies and agents, but primarily our work is for people inside the industry, like a B2B world. But our passion here is to work on strategy, to start with strategy, because early on when we first started, I was doing a lot of things that I felt kind of like we're putting lipstick on a pig. Like there really wasn't a good story here. And I'm making collateral, we're making brochures, we're writing things for clients, but there wasn't a story. There wasn't anything unique. There was no sense of what the product was or who the market for it was. And so I started asking more questions that were more strategic in nature. And we've gotten to the point now where we've made it really simple, but you've got to start with the strategy. You've got to start before you get into anything else in marketing. Or expressing your brand. You have to start with the brand story, and that's what we like to do.
Well, I'm starting to connect some dots here, because with your background in journalism, as you started mentioning those words like, where's the story here? There's no story here, and asking the right questions. It sounds like your background in journalism really set the right path for you to be able to bring the storytelling element into the branding strategy for the agencies that you work with.
It's funny how words have evolved. I mean, executive briefs used to be 5,000 words. Now they're 1,500. We used to have on television a soundbite of 90 seconds. If you can imagine, we'd coach people to have a great 90-second soundbite. Now it's like 5 seconds or 7 seconds. So our attention spans have gotten smaller or shorter. But I will say that Google and the whole search engine phenomenon does value well-written sentences and paragraphs and bullets and FAQs and things like that. So the insurance trade media still values articles that have a point of view, that talk about trends and talk about things that people care about. And so we still find ourselves doing a lot of writing, Katlyn. And I think it's a bit of a lost art, to be honest. I mean, it's not like I want to sound like an old fart just trying to hang on to the written word, but a lot of content, when you look at it, let's say an infographic, there are words that are attached to those icons, those photos that are in an infographic. When you have a video, you're still expressing some words that maybe there's a script, maybe it's lightly scripted, but you still have to write. So most of us are former journalists here, and I think it adds a lot of value to our clients.
Well, it's an interesting nuance, because even though we have those shorter sound bites to work with, it could be shorter copy or something that has to fit into an infographic. I think sometimes making the message concise and yet still powerful is harder than writing a really long report. And there's a famous quote out there that I can't remember off the top of my head, but it says something along the lines of, I would have sent a shorter email, but I didn't have the time.
Yeah. I think it might have been Mark Twain who said, "I'm sorry for the long letter. I didn't have a time to write a short one." That is why it takes a lot longer to write a 3 or 4 or 5 word tagline for a new product than it does to write a 1,000-word article. It's really hard to be concise if you want to have those words mean something. And we believe that words have consequences, and you can't leave it to chance. So even in a small agency, 11 people is the average, I think. You've got to have a really good story that everybody buys into enthusiastically and shares. Because if you don't, leave it to chance, people are going to freelance and make up their own stuff. And as the company gets bigger and bigger, you start to see the wheels coming off from a culture standpoint, and from ultimately the customer, what you say to customer standpoint.
So to catch our audience up on your current projects, Peter, in addition to the branding work that you do at the Aartrijk firm, can you tell us a little bit about your podcast? And I'd love to chat a little bit about your book as well.
Yeah, I've had a podcast called On Point on Insurance Journal. Thanks for asking. InsuranceJournal.tv for about 10 years now. I talk with people around the industry who are good at just chatting about technology, brand, what's going on with customer care, customer communications, and talk to a lot of insurtechs. It's sort of a blend of people. I try to find people from all different parts of the industry. Today, I just recorded with a really interesting lady who works at Score Re. This is a life reinsurance company. Like, no one in the P&C world has ever heard of Score Re or has ever heard of Stephanie Dunn, my guest. But she was so articulate around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and tells a really, really personal story about her life, but also what she's bringing to the company, which is a huge global company. And so the diversity angle, I've started about once a quarter, I talk to people about that. So it's just things that are on my mind, things I'm curious about, things I'm learning from. And I try to make it about the audience. I try to make it about the guest. It's not about me. I'm just a facilitator. Take the ego out of it. And I just like I said earlier, I just love the insurance peeps. I love chatting with them. And I love your podcast too. Now the book, I got to plug the book, Katlyn. Here we go. The Powers. It's been out a couple of years. This is a very easy to read guidebook. We made it that way. My business partner, Tony Wessling, and I wrote this book. It's for any size business. It allows you to not only understand the why of why you need a brand strategy, but how to do it, how to get it done without hiring a bunch of expensive consultants or kind of making it up all on your own. There's a blend that you need to make it happen. And we can talk more about that later. But it's designed to be like a real working, guide guideline for you, 10 factors for building an exponentially more powerful brand. And it's all this stuff that seems so sort of consequential or fuzzy or mystical or mythical, when in fact, even for a small agency, it's the most important asset that you have is your brand and culture strategy. And you've got to get that story straight before you talk to anybody, before you hire anybody new, before you talk with prospects, before you roll out a new product line, before you do a new website. You've got to go through this process. And so we're really proud of the book. And, I hope people will find it useful. We've gotten good feedback on it.
And I think it's so important for independent agency owners to be working towards having a really strong brand story and brand positioning and that strategy, because in the captive world, you can use the captive company's branding as the first thing that your clients think of when they think of your agency. You might even answer the phone using the name of the captive company. But when you transition into the independent world, one of the first steps is, who do you want your agency to be? Your agency will have its own identity in the independent world. And so for our agents in the audience who are listening, who are in the process of making that leap from the captive world to the independent world, this is something that you can be thinking about right now. And I think that one of the things that when I had a agency in the captive world, I had this assumption, because I didn't know a lot of people in the independent world. It just wasn't part of my circle or my bubble at the time. And I thought that independent agencies were very focused on price because they sold different brands. And one of the reasons I wasn't interested in moving independent was because I wanted to make sure my clients had the best coverage and that we were protecting their assets and having coverage conversations. And I think that's for our, if you're thinking about going captive to independent, that's something you can be thinking about now, is how can you use the value conversations that served you well in the captive world to build your independent agency brand and to differentiate you, if that isn't the angle that you're going to take with your agency when it comes to the role that price is going to play in your conversation with clients.
Yeah, and I think somebody once told me that price is what it costs and value is what it's worth. And if I were going to start an independent agency, I would be thinking about deeper relationships with maybe fewer customers, get the conversation, trying to be of real significance to potentially fewer people, but ultimately you still have the same revenue because clearly you're going to be selling them more. They're not going to be leaving you as often. And so the thing with this brand thing is it's really not a tactic. It's really not a nice to have. It's an absolute must have. And as you would buy an independent agency management system, an AMS, whether it's Vertafore, Applied, or whatever you want, and as you would invest in office space, whether you own or lease, as you would invest in employees, which is a big chunk of obviously of cost for an agency, you should be investing in brand because it's a strategy, it's long-term, it's an investment. It's not a marketing tactic, and that's why I think a lot of agencies struggle with this, because they're thinking that it's just another thing, a little project I could try for a while. Like we tried a postcard campaign, we tried an email campaign, and it didn't work. And you start to peel back the onion of why it didn't work, and you're like, well, there was no real story, there was no staying power, there was no investment, and there was no strategic big idea behind it, which every single agency needs. They need that big story.
Do you see branding strategies getting pushed under the rug in agencies just because it takes that time investment and because it's a long-term play?
Well, I don't think it's super expensive, and I don't think it does have to be a long-term play. But the initial work may seem hard at first, but it's so well worth doing. What I see, Katlyn, are three chunks of agencies, three categories. The top 20% really understand the value of brand being the most important asset you have. They've gone through the process of identifying mission, vision, core values, their origin story, where they came from, why they care about a better world for their customers. All these things are so critical. 20% of the 30 or 40,000 independent agencies out there, I estimate there's a big middle chunk of agencies, and I don't think it's another third. It might be, another 40% or something who know they want to work on this, just can't for whatever reason get their arms around doing it. They might be frankly trying to deal with a producer who should leave, or an agency owner who's aging who should leave, or they're struggling with decisions over how to grow, or they lost a big market, whatever it is, they're struggling, but they know they need to do it. They don't need to be told the why. It's just like, how do we get started? And then there's frankly the bottom group that really are just riding this out. They might be harvesting the revenue out of their firms. They're just coasting. This is not for them. I mean, and it's hey, listen, the beauty of being an independent agent is that you are working in the best country on the planet. You can do whatever you want. It's your firm. That's the beauty of business ownership. And I'm not here to lecture. I'm just saying that the people who understand this are growing faster. They're more profitable. They keep their employees. They keep their customers. They're able to expand into new lines. They're able to expand into new geographies because they have that power, just like Starbucks or Nike have, of being able to segue into new things. So it's really a strategy, and it's an investment, but it pays off if you look at the firms who are doing better than the average bear.
What are the first steps that an insurance agency owner should take when they're establishing a brand? They're opening up their doors and they know that they need to make this a priority. What first steps should they take?
I think the number one thing to do is to gather up your key stakeholders. If you're a small firm, 11 or less, say, for example, it's probably everybody. Everybody's a key stakeholder. As the firms grow, when you get into dozens of employees, and again, the same rule would apply to whether you're a broker, insurance carrier, program administrator, MGA, whoever you are, these same rules apply. You gather up typically between 8 and 15 key stakeholders. These are going to be the owners. These are going to be, business people in charge of customer service, for example. These key stakeholders have a lot to say about where the firm has been and where it's going. What we do is they take a confidential questionnaire to bring out their comments about what they should stop doing, what they should start doing, and what they should keep doing at all costs. And you start to develop consensus around the brand and the culture. And if you think about brand, as we think about it, it's in the book, Katlyn, it's like brand and culture are the same thing. It's like an infinity symbol, if you can draw that in your head, or I'm doing it now, I guess. But on one side is brand, one side is culture, but it's a continuum. In the middle, where that X is core values. And core values is really what should drive 5 to 7 action items, should drive employees and ultimately be shared with customers. And we know our favorite brands, they're living their core values. One of them for an agency could be challenging the status quo. We're going to do things different around here. We're going to be respectful to each other. Whatever those core values are, that is the only HR manual that you really need to run your agency. You don't need a big, thick manual of what to wear, when to come in, et cetera. Let those core values drive. So the key stakeholders develop this language around mission, vision, values, et cetera. And also you can talk with your customers. What do they see you should be keeping at all costs, stop doing, and what better experience could you have that they would like you to have that would truly delight them. You also want to look at your competition. It doesn't mean you obsess about them. It doesn't mean you try to emulate them. It means that here are 3 competitors, even if they're weak competitors or kind of competitors. What are they doing? What is on their website? What is their personality on their website? What are they conveying to the marketplace? We don't want to be like them. We want to have our own brand messaging. This is about us being in control of our destinies. And if you don't go through these steps of defining who you are, then other people, like competitors, will do it for you. And that's not a good place to be. And it's happening every day around this industry, where people are letting others define them, and it hurts you from a market share standpoint and a growth standpoint. So those are the building blocks. I think having, this is a kind of a fun workshop experience that we talk about in the book. This is not a heavy lift. This is not very expensive. It's not hiring consultants to tell you where you should go. It's hiring consultants to help facilitate the words that are already inside of you, the aspirations and hopes and dreams you have for your company, for your agency, and where you want to go with it. It's about the future, and it's really, really exciting, and ultimately will save you time down the road to fix things that aren't quite right. And you see this all over the place, Katlyn, with bad websites and bad signage, and these tangible expressions of a poor strategy emerge, whether you like it or not, over time if you're not careful.
And agents, those words that he just said, the words are already inside of you. The story's already there. We're taking time to think through how we're going to articulate that as a team. And when you get together as a group, you'll be able to combine your ideas, and ideas feed off of each other and they grow. So I love your idea, Peter, to survey the key stakeholders and think about, what are we going to start doing? What are we going to stop doing? What are we going to keep doing at all costs? Thinking through what will truly delight our clients, and being aware of what our competition is doing so that it's on our radar, and we can think, how can we do this differently? How can we do this better so that we are cutting edge in everything that we do? And I think that it's a pretty high stakes situation, like you said, especially with so much competition in the market. So what are some symptoms of poor branding strategies that you've seen?
Well, the one that comes to mind immediately when you ask that question, I get asked that one a lot, is a sign I saw on an independent agency in a beautiful old bank building in downtown Denver. I do not know if this agency is there anymore, but it's this, imagine what, you've seen those big oversized wood doors, that have the glass in them, and maybe tempered glass or stained glass. And it's just almost like walking into a giant church. And in the window is a sign that says, push, in all capital letters, push, door sticks. And it's underlined, exclamation marks, underline, push. And so the door sticks, right? This is the first thing people see when they visit the agency, back when we actually, visited people. But I think of this sign because I think of who wrote the sign. Who wrote that sign is probably the receptionist or somebody close to the door, who has to get up and pull the door open because the door sticks. And I say to myself, how can we freelance like this? How can we have a culture in which someone has to get up and make the sign and open the door for people? Just fix the door, right? Simple example, but I'm telling you, you see it manifested all over the place. You see it on websites that look like something from the 1990s. I will tell you, Katlyn, one of the biggest issues we have as a distribution channel is how we look online. People are not going to beautiful old bank buildings anymore. They're doing a lot of things online. And agents tell me all the time, well, this is a relationship business. We don't need marketing. This is a relationship business. And that is true. But how do you get to the point where you even build a relationship? That is called marketing. And if you get referrals, which is a great source of new business for agents, of course, what are the first thing people going to do? They're not, the people who refer you are not going to have your phone number. They're going to have maybe your website address, or maybe they'll just say Google Smith and Jones, so they go to your website. How many people do you know? How many people are going to your website and just they're just turned off? There's nothing there really interesting to them. It's not engaging. It's a bunch of jargon. It's a bunch of photos of stock art photos. It's brochureware. It's acronyms like CGL and BOP and things like that. And it just turns people off. We know this is a human business. We've got to make our websites and our social media much more about the human side, because people buy from people. And so I think those are a couple of examples. I think dated materials, dated logos is another manifestation of it. Agents hang on to their visual identities way too long. Visual identity being your name, your logo, your tagline, because it kind of works, but you show it to somebody objectively, they're like, this looks like something from the 1980s, with Times New Roman fonts. And And, the best brands, you see this happening all the time. They will make even subtle tweaks to their logos um, that you don't really even notice unless you start looking at all of the old ones, like Starbucks is a great example, or Southwest,
So true.
that every 5 or 10 years, they are tweaking things to keep up, but they're so subtle that you don't necessarily notice, but it's still noticeable when you lay them all down next to each other. So every 5 to 10 years, you've got to take a look at your visual identity. That's probably another key one that I see.
Yes, and to a business owner who would say that, oh, I'm investing in relationships, so I don't need to invest in marketing. I would just add to that sometimes it's easier to be able to identify what's working than to be able to see what's not working, because a client who came to your website and looked and left, that's a silent detractor. And so there's an opportunity cost to everything that we do. Everything that we do, we're going to have some wins, we're going to have some losses. And I think just being aware of the potential, the stronger our brand is, and having a fresh pair of eyes on it who can look at it from the outside in and consult with us about whether or not it's going to cause us losses or more wins is really valuable.
Yeah, it's one of those areas of work, Katlyn. I mean, we all have to struggle with enough time in the day, but think of the 4 quadrants of work: important, not important, urgent, non-urgent. This is one of those areas that doesn't seem very urgent. We tend to work on the urgent categories, whether they're important or not. But it's super important, and it's so worth the time to sit down and really think about where you want to go in the future, and not to just mail it in. I mean, an agent showed me his business card one time, and he says, "What do you think about our new logo?" And I'm looking at it. It looked like a chain link fence. It just looked so weird. And then he goes, "My wife designed it." Talk about a loaded question, right?
Right.
You've got to. Here's the other thing too, Katlyn. This world of marketing is shifting. Very few agencies can afford or think they can afford to have even a part-time marketing professional. I'm not talking about the front desk. I'm not talking about a CSR who does, mails postcards every Friday afternoon. That's not a marketing professional, like a real marketing professional, or that have hired a marketing consultancy to walk them through what's required. Again, because they're thinking expense. They're thinking, oh, we just need some new brochures for this conference we're going to, with contractors or something. They're thinking collateral. They're thinking brochures. They're thinking brochures. They're thinking PDFs, flyers, brochures,
emails,
golf balls, printed. Where is your digital marketing strategy? Where is your brand strategy? What does your online office look like, your website? These are things you've got to tackle, and you can't just kind of mail it in. You can't.
So along those lines of that, that moment where someone shows you a logo and it's just not on not on the right track. I'm curious to know what fixer-upper stories you have. So what's your biggest rescue story of helping an agent get from the chain link fence logo to a better place?
Oh, that's a tough one. How about we talk about general stories as opposed to specific firms? Because I don't want to. I get the question. I totally get storytelling. There's nothing like it. But I do have an example of a carrier we worked with. If I could find this slide. So here is a regional P&C company. And I'm going to find some more examples for independent agents, but you'll again, it's the same process. So here is the core values. This is the core values on the website, was on the website for this regional P&C carrier. A quote, not a list of 5 to 7 things, a quote. "We see our associates, our independent agents, and our other business partners focused by one set of core aligned values." So that is their core value, is that we're aligned. We're aligned on our values. And I'm looking at that saying,
so the core value is that we're aligned on our values.
Yeah.
So it wasn't very specific.
We're all aligned on our one set of aligned values. We're all together. We're all singing Kumbaya. And I say, well, what are they? Tell us more about the values. So we worked with them, and now they have a set of 5. Again, these are action statements, core values besides vision and brand essence. We haven't talked about essence, but those are the 3 most important categories. And I always go there first and see what we need to fix or what we need to create. So now this carrier has 5. Commit to a culture of education. So we're not saying, CPCU, we're not saying CIC, it could be time management training, it could be anything. So commit to a culture of education. This is how people are going to behave inside the company. We're going to be people who are constantly curious to learn, right? Great core value. The second one is make it right. It doesn't say the customer is always right, which is a horrible core value you see a lot of, and it's not even true. But make it right, and that could be with an associate, it could be with a customer, it could be anything. Encourage and embrace innovation. So how that happens is left up to the particular employee or department. Number 4, deliver your best, own your role. Again, this allows people to say, have I done my best? When you go in for your review, it's like, I really didn't own my role. I didn't deliver my best. Why is that? Maybe it's the wrong fit for me here, whatever. And then finally, invest in partnerships. Together, we're stronger. So that speaks to the independent agent. That speaks to the customers. So again, actionable statements. You typically see a lot of agents with no or weak core values. And if you're trying to attract talent, Katlyn, I think the independent agent channel is a wonderful place for people to work. It's flexible. They care about their communities, which is important to young workers for sure. And it's a stable industry. I mean, these 3 things together, it's a very strong employment brand. But if we don't have our core values written down and on our websites about what it's like to work here, we're not going to attract the best talent. So that's we do a lot of work around improving logos. I know that's for me the fun part of all of this. Logos are the cool part. It's the tangible part. But I cannot tell you how bad the logo situation is out there for the independent agents. It is really bad.
Absolutely.
And I would say too, like losing the words insurance and agency and Inc. and LLC, and thinking bigger about the name of your firm so that it's not just tied to local independent insurance agency, Inc., LLC. There's all these words don't mean anything. What is the one name or 2 words, 1 word or 2 words you can run with that are really powerful? And when you go through a merger like Insurica did out in the West, Midwest with 17 agencies, they just changed all these names from Smith, Jones, Wesson, et cetera, to just Insurica, which is a great name.
Those core values that you shared are so inspiring. And isn't that the goal of those core value statements, to get the entire team excited about who we are as a company and what we're here to do every day? And I love how you guys took it from something that was very generic, where they were trying to describe how agents and clients and the team all interacted together. And you came out with 5 core values that applied to all of those audiences.
Yeah, core values are really cool, and they have to be authentic to you. So some of those I listed of those 5 may not work for your agency, but you can't expect customers to love your company until your associates, the employees, love it first, and they love it because those core values are aligned with what they want to do. It screens new employees, but it also allows people who work there to say, this is the kind of place I want to be. And even if you're not relentlessly innovative or something like that yet, you can be down the road. So it's aspirational too. There's an MGA in New York City called Thimble, and it's an insurtech. If you read this list of core values, which I have on the screen here, it's like astonishing how New York it is. Like they have every moment counts, own every detail. Green light means go, simplify, get to the point, make it crystal clear. Like it's like New York Minute, right? This may not work for a Midwest independent insurance agency. That's fine, but this is authentic to Thimble. So you've got to give some thought to how employees are going to treat each other and their customers. The core values absolutely should be on your website to attract employees and to attract customers.
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned some of the reasons that the independent insurance channel is such a wonderful place for someone to build a career and put down roots where they can thrive for a long time. But I feel that sometimes insurance itself has a branding problem. So we don't see kids dressing up like insurance agent superstars for Halloween, or off to high school, like graduating high school and going off to college, dreaming of owning their own insurance agency one day. So just to wrap up our conversation today, Peter, what is something we can all do to help turn around the branding image for the insurance industry as a whole?
That's a great question, Caitlin. I feel like this industry is a rocket ship of opportunity for young people and all kinds of people. I think we know it's a cool industry. What's going on in technology is is big, and not just insurtech, but what's happening with carriers and agents in evolving their technology. I think we need to tell stories. I think we need to talk about how we help people and the job opportunities in the insurance industry. We got to stop using jargon. We got to start telling human stories. We know this is not a distant, faceless, and personal industry that's just concerned about numbers and profits. And that's what comes across a lot of times when you ask young people about insurance industry. Ooh, they'll say, I don't want to sell life insurance. I don't want to work at this insurance company. It sounds boring. There were so many cool jobs. And I think on the front lines of this, the work that independent agents are doing right now to serve people and to help people is hugely important. And I just think we got to tell more stories and stop apologizing for working the insurance. I hate when people say, yeah, I'm just an insurance agent. It's like, no. You should be proud of this industry. It is an absolute rocket ship.
There's so much opportunity in this world and so much good that we can do. So, Peter, thank you for reminding us to start with the brand story. People buy from people, tell human stories. That's something we can all do.
Mhm.
And, Peter, how can our listeners reach out to you to talk more about their agency brand strategy?
I'd love to chat with anybody anytime about anything. It's Peter at Aartrijk.com, Peter at AARTRIJK.com. And my cell is 703-868-0144. I also call that my shoe phone because I'm a big Get Smart fan. I was going to say James Bond, but Get Smart had a shoe phone, which was really cool back in the 60s. And at PVR Trike on Twitter, and our website is artrike.com. So honestly, anybody who needs just to run stuff by me, I'm always happy to chat with your listeners. Caitlin, thanks for having me on the show.
It's been a great conversation, Peter. Thanks for coming on the show. And agents, we hope you enjoyed everything that Peter shared about how to think about the story that we have to tell as a team and getting that in front of our clients. And I'm looking forward to chatting with you next time. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.